Hello everybody and welcome to episode 15 of T.W.E.T, the podcast where we just sit here, chat about games, what's been going on recently, and just kind of go from there, you know, in the massively unstructured way that we went before. Really sorry if you guys are in the stream. I had some technical difficulties which I had to reset my computer. Thank you Nvidia for taking up all of my GPU.
Good thing
yeah.
to see it's running better now, though. That's good.
Yeah, running a hell of a lot better. But yes, we are live, we're back, and everything is running as should be, thank God. So yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for everybody that is there, and thank you all on YouTube when this comes out the following day. Thanks for watching it, and I hope that you have a bit of fun here and agree with kind of what we're saying, because this week's a big one. I think this is an emergency podcast.
Well, as soon as the news that we'll get to was announced, it was basically just emergency podcast immediately, as soon as possible.
The US office, situation going on. The cold opening. It's happening. It's happening.
It's happening
for sure. And it's just been. I'm absolutely shocked by this news. It's some incredible news that, personally, I'm just going to start it off and say that I think it's fantastic for a lot of the industry, and there's going to be reasons as to why, whilst people probably will not agree at this point why we believe it to be good for the industry.
Yes.
So first of all, if you've not heard the news yet, which I'm surprised you haven't, because it's pretty big news, Microsoft have bought out Zenimax Media. Zenimax Media are the parent company to Bethesda Game Studios and a whole host of other studios as well, including like Arkane Studios, who did the Arkham Knight series, which were absolutely fantastic games. And this piece of news on this grand scale is so jaw-droppingly shocking, and so huge that the moment that I heard about it, I tagged Rooster straight into the Discord and said, "Rooster, it's podcast time. Let's go!" And
it's ridiculous news. Though. It's
same
jaw-dropping news.
It is. It's completely crazy.
It's come out of complete left field. That's the thing. There's been no build-up. It was just bang. Like, we've acquired Bethesda, ZeniMax, and all the subsidiaries. And it was like, what? Okay. Since when? And they're like, yeah, since now. Just since now. Like, it's just they're us.
Yes, they are.
I think that is the good way to put it as well. And hopefully things continue the way they are. I mean, Xbox could change in a year's time and become the bad guy again. But as of present, the way they treat the companies they acquire, I'd like to say that it's more of they're not owned by Xbox, they're part of Xbox.
Yes.
Because it's very much a case of Microsoft have acquired ZeniMax, but Bethesda and Arkane, it's all very much just keep doing what you do, only you're now under the umbrella of Microsoft with all the resources and things and glory that comes along with that. But all your plans, all your current sort of feature, everything you currently work on, continue working on it the way you usually do. There is no dictatorship with this, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like from what we've seen in the past, Microsoft do tend to just let the developers crack on and do their thing.
Yeah, it was
not
very
like
much
Activision, that, very much shoehorns the process.
But it was like when they acquired Obsidian, and there was a lot of question about but is this really that great for Obsidian? And it really was, because as we know, when they acquired them, Obsidian were working on the Outer Worlds. And people were wondering, what's Microsoft going to do to the Outer Worlds, or are they really happy with how that's going? And Obsidian have, said since the acquisition, and it's been quite clear that they were acquired by Microsoft and just allowed to continue. Like nothing changed. They were working on Outer Worlds, and Microsoft just went, "Yeah, cool. We like what you're doing. Like just keep making the Outer Worlds." And it obviously wasn't just a case of, yeah, well, as soon as Outer Worlds is done, you do what we want, because they've recently just put out a big DLC for the game. So even when it released, they continued doing what they were doing. They weren't just pulled away from what they were doing to do what Microsoft wanted them to do,
Yeah.
which was the big worry a couple of years ago when Microsoft first started acquiring studios. People were worried about another EA. Acquire studios, fuck them up, ditch them. And it's just, that hasn't been how it's gone.
God, no.
Now, like I said, I'm not a fortune teller. 5 years down the line, we may be talking about how,
Wait,
oh
what?
my God,
You're not?
I can't believe Xbox did this to all these great companies. But as of present, that is not the case. Like, they have done wonders. Microsoft have done wonders with these studios and teams they've been acquiring. And it could just be media spill, but so far, each of them have just been like, yeah, no, it's been brilliant. Like, being acquired by Microsoft was the best thing we did.
Yeah. And I mean, you've got to look at so many development companies that have come and kind of joined with Xbox and Microsoft and all that. Like, I mean, Mojang, the guys that behind Minecraft, they've still been allowed to do what they wanted to do, and it's not like they're creating a new IP or a new game or anything like that. Their sole focus is to continue to develop Minecraft, and I think there have been more teams and there's been more Minecraft products coming out, like the co-op sort of Diablo style game.
Minecraft Dungeons.
Yeah, which that's all well and good, but remember that acquiring can also lead to taking up IPs that are owned by those brands and those companies as well. And sometimes acquiring those different IPs and those old sort of games that are no longer around, they can use their resources to rebuild that. So what we might actually see is something
breathe
that
a fresh breath of life into things as well, and things like that.
Gone. And I think that's what's to be really excited here. By Microsoft acquiring these, basically Zenimax Media, what they're doing is they're allowing them, from what we know at this point, we don't know, we don't have sources, but they're acquiring them saying, you guys keep doing what you're doing, but here's 10 times the resource. And then they'll probably go to them and say, look, let's try this, let's do something different. I think the biggest worry that people have right now is that games like Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Doom, those really big IPs, especially in the Bethesda kind of camp, will go to an Xbox-only exclusive.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No. So my thought process around this is these are established IPs already. They're established universes, and everybody across multiple different platforms and all these different platforms absolutely love these games. So what are you doing by removing, as a company, if they decided to just have it as an Xbox exclusive for PC and Xbox consoles, what they're actually doing is they're removing, I keep changing the number, but anything between 10 and 33% of their profitability, because these are established IPs. If Elder Scrolls 6 only comes out on the PC and the Xbox, you're actually removing profit because it's an established IP on PlayStation that will sell. So what in their right mind would make them do that? They would only be harming themselves going forward, and it just wouldn't be a smart move financially. Considering
they've already proved as well that the fact that they are willing to sort of allow things to continue. When they acquired Mojang and Minecraft,
and Undead Labs as probably the best example.
Minecraft have continued to be put out on multiple things. It came out on PlayStation. They were just like, yeah, cool, we want to keep putting it out.
Yeah, and that's it. And Undead Labs is a great example kind of that, because Undead Labs, the creators of State of Decay, State of Decay, the first one I think was when they acquired them. And then they made State of Decay 2, and now they're making State of Decay 3, and I'm pretty sure that development team is creating these games, and they are Xbox exclusives, but they've got complete freedom to create the game as they want it to be created. And you can see that because there's still those little bits of elements from the first game to the second game that they've worked on and they've focused on, and it's not like, as you said earlier, an EA where they're just rehashing the same crap. I mean, the core gameplay elements are similar, yes, but it was evolved on and it was improved across the Undead Labs sort of State of Decay 1 to 2, and will most probably be the same in State of Decay 3. And Microsoft is moving, and has been moving for years now, into a direction where their whole focus is around video gaming, not Xbox.
they're more about the service, the software, the games that they produce, more than the hardware that they produce now.
Yes.
Like, yes, Xbox will continue to make Xbox consoles. I don't think that'll ever go away. I think every generation we will continue to get a new Xbox console. But their main focus has shifted away from that and has shifted more towards actually producing games and services and things like that. It's why their focus to PC has become so much stronger over the past few years, is because they realized that, you know, they have this belief that gaming, people have the right to be able to play games however they choose to.
Yes.
And like, they keep using mobile as an example, and I know a lot of people, you know, turn their nose up at mobile gaming and don't like it, but I understand why it's mobile they keep referring to when they talk about this, because it's the perfect example of how, yeah, you've got your PC gamers, you've got your console gamers, and, you know, these are the people that are really into it. But if you are a mobile gamer, in their eyes, you still have the right to play these games.
Yeah.
And that's why they're putting out these cloud services and things like that, to allow you to play these big IPs on your phone. Now, that's your choice. You're not going to get the greatest experience. You want a better experience than that. You want crisp gameplay, you go to console. You want the ultimate experience, go to PC.
Yes.
But they come with extra costs and you know, things that are needed. Not everybody can build a PC and have a PC desk set up, and so that's why some people like consoles. It just hooks up to their TV, they sit on their settee. But then, not everybody, you know, let's just say you travel for work and you're literally flights to different countries all the time. Can't take a console and TV with you.
No, of course not.
And so this is where it's coming in really well, that they're doing this xCloud and this streaming to phones. And I guess, you know, it's going to have problems. It's going to have latency. It's going to have lag. It's not going to be perfect. But that's the sacrifice that you unfortunately are having to make because you don't have access to these other things. And that has been their sort of soul-driven force for the past few years, is whoever you are, however you're able to play, you deserve to play. Doesn't matter what your options or choices are, here are games, we want you to be able to play them.
Yeah.
And
I
that is
completely agree with
Xbox
you.
now.
And that's the thing. Xbox is moving into accessibility.
Yes,
That's what
big
Xbox are doing. They're making gaming as accessible to people everywhere where they can. And that's where they differ with this console war. So I did big air quotation marks for anybody who's not watching the video. Yeah, console wars, where Sony is actually pulling away the accessibility by focusing on trying to get as many exclusives to its console as possible, because they're focusing on a hardware sell. Whereas Xbox are moving, as you said, into the cloud, on PC, onto their own consoles. But I mean, that's exactly why there are 2 consoles being offered, with a third one rumored for Xbox, at different price ranges with different abilities. Because it's accessibility.
They've transitioned themselves into a brand rather than a console, simply put.
Exactly that. And it's running off of the Game Pass. So that's what a lot of the new equipment is kind of running off of. That's what the Xbox Series S is really focused on, is, you know, coupling that with Game Pass.
Yeah, it's essentially a Game Pass machine.
Yeah. And
it
doesn't matter
disc,
what,
digital only, nice and small. Hook it up to
doesn't
your
matter what
TV, get the Game Pass, boom.
anybody in the industry says, Game Pass is the greatest pro-consumer thing to happen to gaming for, I don't even know how long. Probably since Steam started.
Yes, I can agree with that.
And it's just, the level of accessibility for people because of Game Pass is absolutely unreal. Exactly, Yeti. Who doesn't love Game Pass? No one should have a bad word to say about Game Pass. Anybody who has a bad word to say about Game Pass is just being spiteful for no good reason,
Or
and
missing the point of it.
or completely missing the point of it. And
Yeah.
I understand some people are, oh well, I prefer to own a game. That's fine. People will still have Game Pass and buy games. That's just part and parcel. That's going to happen. But there's absolutely no reason to be negative towards Game Pass, because what does Game Pass actually give people? Well, if you couple the Game Pass with the Xbox Series X, what you're talking about is a console for £250, just under $300, plus a subscription for, let's say it's just console. I believe that is around about $7.99 right now, monthly.
Yeah, I think
for
so.
the console
I
pass.
think so, yeah.
That alone, and that's every single month, and that's bringing hundreds of different games, including Xbox first party games from day one. That's giving accessibility to people. Now, and it's something that I spoke to you about, Roost, and literally I don't think you were there at that point, but we've got to think outside of the box here and not think about us as an individual and how that impacts us, because I'm a streamer, I've got good equipment, I've got a good PC. You guys, we've played games for years. We're in a good place where really we're sitting there going, do I want the Xbox Series X? Not really, because I've got a good PC. Do I want the PlayStation 5? Yeah, probably because of the exclusives, all of that crap. But what about these people that can't afford that? What about these families that don't have that kind of money? And, they now have options.
Think about it's the younger generation as well that you've got to consider. It's the current, early teenagers who are going to get one of these for Christmas. It's going to be their Christmas present. It's probably going to be one of the biggest, most important Christmas presents they have for the next few years. I mean, I know that it was like that for me, that if I got the latest console when that came out as a Christmas present, obviously they come out like 8 years apart. So, I was too young when one came out, and then I was hitting my sort of early teens when like the 360 and the PS3 came out. And for me and my older brother, it was like such a big deal about like, we get one of these latest consoles, like this is going to be wild. And then at the time we had personally chosen the PS3. I later went on to get an Xbox 360 myself, but when it was me and my brother making the decision together, we agreed that between the two of us the PlayStation 3 was the better option. And
yeah.
it was a huge thing, and it's like, this is what these consoles are going to be for the younger generation now. And the accessibility and the options that come along with these newer generation of consoles these days is so much bigger than back when we got the PS3 for the first time. And like you said, if they make the choice of the Xbox, whether it's the Series S or the X, you imagine being 11, 12 years old, you get the Series S for Christmas, and your mum or dad agrees that, yeah, actually, this Game Pass thing, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Instead of buying them these games throughout the years, and then they probably want games for their birthday, and then there'll be more games next year for Christmas and things like that. It'll be like, there's this small subscription, which is not far off anything else I'd ever subscribed to. And there you go. Like my child now has this console for Christmas, big deal. And all of these games that they can play now throughout the rest of the year. And it's like, that is massive. That is so groundbreaking to the industry, in my opinion.
Huge. The only thing coming close to sort of anything to do with consoles, I think, was when PlayStation announced that you wouldn't have to pay for their online services. As kind of like close to, because that was a huge thing. And I'm bringing that up because of what Yeti's just said here, saying, with the Game Pass Ultimate, it's only around £4 more a month than the normal Xbox Live Gold, which that's exactly true. You're talking about a model which was I can't even remember what the cost of Gold was anymore, it's been so long now, but on a monthly kind of subscription payment just to play online, which was standard across the industry. PlayStation was one of the first to kind of remove that, excluding PC from this equation.
And they added it again.
And then they did the Plus thing, which was like, here you go, you get more crap. Which nobody really wants. And then Microsoft has gone, well, we have this, so we know that people are willing to pay for it. So why don't we couple this and then Game Pass together, which is Game Pass Ultimate, so that people not only have access to online accessibility, but 100 plus games, of which some of those are first party games that people would have to probably pay about 50 to 60 quid, $60 to $70 to actually play.
Yeah.
And then you got to consider other countries as well and exchange rates. A $70 game in America could be very expensive in somewhere, in Europe or Middle East or anything like that, because of exchange rates. So it may not see. And
Yeah,
to
well,
me,
I know
60 quid is
Linda
ridiculous.
has recently been saying that in Norway she's been facing a lot of
Yes.
steep pricing issues where in Norway the consoles, when she was looking at them, were wildly overpriced, even with the exchange rate. And it took a while for that to sort of get resolved. So there are certain countries that have these issues with exchange rates and how much things end up costing, and so they're really providing this accessibility because to these countries where it's just this subscription and there's so many games. And the thing is, it keeps getting better. So it has finally, the PC, for example, one has finally come out of beta. It was £4 a month, is now £8 a month. That, for one, that's still a fantastic deal. Even if nothing had changed and they just upped it to the £8 and just said that the service is, we're confident the service is stable now, so we're out of beta, here's the real price, I'd be like, yeah, okay, no, that's fair enough. You gave us a cheaper price because you weren't sure whether it was going to be finicky, and you didn't want, you wanted a goodwill gesture of, okay, if you've got to deal with some shit, you pay less.
Yeah.
And that'd be fine. But it's just got so much better. I mean, they've just acquired EA Play to it. Was that a week ago they announced that? And that was,
I think it was about a week ago, yeah.
And that was oh my god. And then to have acquired Zenimax Studio, which comes along with Arkane, Bethesda Game Softworks, id,
Take
Tango
my £4.
Gameworks,
Microsoft, have my extra £4, please.
Yeah, exactly. Can we just talk about the fact that they upped it by £4 and added all of those studios to their umbrella, and that means that every single game these people put out, excluding the ones that had already made PlayStation 5 exclusivity deals, which they are honoring, are all going to come to Game Pass day one. That's the thing. Day one. A new Doom game comes out, Game Pass. Elder Scrolls, when that comes out, Game Pass. Starfield,
stop.
That's going to be Game
Don't talk
Pass.
about Elder Scrolls because I will fangirl and I'll screech.
Hang on. What's that? They've just made a new Dishonored or a Wolfenstein? Game Pass.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure some of you have played Evil Within. Let's just see if they just made a new Evil Within.
Do you know
Game
what?
Pass.
I haven't played Evil
keep
Within.
Thinking about that.
I know.
Fallout. Game Pass.
Stop it. I have. Just stop.
I can keep going.
No, because I'm going to screech like a fangirl in a minute. I really am.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous to say so many huge name IPs: Starfield, Doom, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Wolfenstein, Dishonored, Prey, Evil Within, any future games of those IPs, Game Pass day one.
Yeah.
No extra cost.
Yep.
That is absolutely staggering to the industry. And as we have already said, there are a lot of people going on about but these are now going to be Xbox exclusives. And I really don't think so. Yeah, they've beat around the bush a bit with the answer. I think that's them just playing the clever game without officially saying the words, they will come to PS5. They're going to drive up a couple of extra Xbox sales. And can you blame them? They've still got to make a bit of money.
Yeah.
But they have sort of loosely beat around the bush by saying case by case basis it'll be looked at, and we pride ourselves on getting things out to as they put it, PC, Xbox, onto the mobiles with xCloud, and then they say, and other devices. So they beat around the bush, but you can see what they're trying to say without saying.
It's like I said earlier, I can guarantee to you, and I'm very confident on this, that those huge IP games, all the ones that you've just listed off there, the Wolfensteins, the Elder Scrolls, Fallout, all of that, all of those IPs will remain on the mainstream consoles, purely because they're already well established. But anything new, anything that comes out of Bethesda that is a brand new IP has the opportunity to become an Xbox only exclusive because they're the studio.
And not just could, but probably will.
Depending on
most
what...
likely. If Arkane, I know Arkane have recently started hiring for 2 brand new unannounced IPs.
Yeah.
So, we don't know what they are. They've recently started hiring for those roles. So Arkane currently have 2 new things on the horizon, so they're going to start working. At this point, probably a safe bet to say those 2 brand new IPs that are completely unannounced, they might end up being Xbox and PC exclusives. And maybe not even just those. You never know. They might come to Switch. I mean, Xbox and Nintendo have a very close relationship. They're very friendly with each other.
That's the thing. We just don't know.
They might not come to PlayStation, but yeah, Starfield. Don't kid yourself. It's coming to PS5. Starfield's coming to PS5.
Interesting story about Starfield. Do you want to go for it, Reese? Because you were the one who told me.
I'd love to have the pleasure because this one's juicy. So, Sony very recently attempted to acquire Starfield from Bethesda Softworks as a PlayStation 5 timed exclusive. They were denied such deal by Bethesda Softworks. Within the week, Zenimax Studios is bought by Microsoft. If that isn't the biggest fuck you to another company, I don't know what is. So one, I personally feel dick move by Sony. They tried to make Starfield one of the most anticipated games coming up. We know so little about Starfield that it's got everyone on the edge of their seats every time we get a hint of could we get more Starfield. It's the first brand new IP that Bethesda Game Studios has put out in, I think it was 15 years. Mm-hmm. So this is a big deal for Bethesda Softworks because they've done nothing but Fallout and Elder Scrolls for a very long time.
Do you think maybe they're feeling the pressure? They know their hardware is subpar compared to the Xbox.
It's possible.
They're really yanking at the exclusives.
They are. And I think with their SSD technology, which I'm at no point am I taking that away from PlayStation and Sony. I think the supposed specs of the SSD and what it should give is fantastic. But my biggest problem with Sony in that regard is that tech itself will be only focused in their own development. And that does absolutely no help to the rest of the industry. And that's my biggest problem with Sony and with PlayStation. They do fuck all, and I mean this, and I don't care if I sound aggressive, they do fuck all to help the entire industry. And it pisses me off that people applaud it. Exclusivity ruins the industry.
A good example there is, for example, it's why you can see when Naughty Dog Studios can put out a game that looks so damn good years after the PS4, and they did it with the PS3 as well, with the Uncharted games as well, and it's because they've got experience in really squeezing every last drop of performance that the consoles can put out, because they have that sort of insider connection to what the PlayStation can actually do. Do you really think a third-party studio that puts their game out on PC, a Nintendo console, on Xbox and on PlayStation would be able to do something that Naughty Dog can do 5 years after the release? No, because they don't have such a close sort of contact and relationship with what hardware is in the PlayStation. So they don't really get to utilize that console to its full potential. It's why, years and years down the line, Uncharted could keep coming out and blowing people's minds on the PS3 and on the PS4 and be like, how are they still making the game look better and better when it's the same console?
Yeah.
It's for those reasons. It's because of the fact they're a first-party studio. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it works like that with Xbox as well. I'm sure with the first-party studios, it's a little bit of a similar thing, but it can be quite a big problem, and that's what's so good about these moves from Xbox recently, where they're not focusing on this. We need to be exclusive. They're focusing more on this needs to get out to everyone.
Yeah, and they've done absolutely everything in in what I think is their power to be able to do that. Accessibility and visibility on Xbox's part as a brand, not as a console, as a brand, has been absolutely incredible to a point where this only benefits the industry. Because what happens with the Game Pass, and I think this was a fear very early on, was that it wouldn't be able to sustain itself because it's a subscription service. And if not enough people buy into the subscription service, it fails and it crumbles.
Yeah.
What has happened is, because they've managed to pull these game studios and these agreements to come through, and Bethesda were one of the first big companies to really get on board with the Game Pass, it's starting to move and pay for itself. So what does that do? If a game comes onto the Game Pass, if a game comes onto the Game Pass, that third-party company, that first-party company, that branch, doesn't really matter. They will actually get steady revenue based off of the Game Pass subscription fees. So later on down the lifespan of a video game, they will get a nice flat figure across from the Game Pass directly. Now, how does that impact first-party titles on day one? Well, the company itself gets the majority of the subscription fees. So from their perspective, actually, it's not just first-party titles that are really bringing the subscriptions in. It's a lot of third-party titles as well. It's now in such a point where it's so sustainable, they bought Zenimax Media for $7.5 billion. That, if that's not a big old flex and a big old swing and dick around movement I've ever seen, to say, look, Game Pass is obviously working for us, and so is the accessibility, and offering a next generation console at $300, people cannot say that Game Pass doesn't work. Yeah, when it obviously does, and
it really is.
I mean, so great for the industry.
They can, but they'd be wrong.
Oh
yeah, they would be very wrong.
They physically can say
it. Claim if they want.
It's just no claim, because there's just there's so many pro arguments for it, and I'm going to use the argument that I heard a little bit earlier today when I was watching the video, and somebody was discussing Game Pass as well, and they said, actually, from an accessibility point of view, people with disabilities can struggle to play video games. We all know that. There are some people with physical and mental difficulties that are unfortunately not able to play certain video games. And in that case, sometimes these individuals may not be able to work. Hence, their funding and their money and everything is quite a bit lower than anybody else, especially in the UK, with disabilities allowance being cut constantly. But what Game Pass actually gives, and what a reduced next generation console actually gives, is it gives people with money issues, with disabilities, the accessibility to try a new game that they want to play. If they get an hour into it and they can't play it anymore, then they can just delete it and try a new one. That's what Game Pass offers. Without Game Pass, you're buying one for £60.
Exactly. Can you imagine paying £60 for a brand new game, and then discovering that due to your disability, it's very, very hard for you to really enjoy yourself on that game? And it's not necessarily the game developer's fault. They didn't know that you wouldn't be able to, but the price is a hefty price to, like you said, get an hour in and realize this isn't working. I'm struggling to enjoy this game because of my disability. That's a really sad fact, and just the fact that then they're being hindered by this, and another game that may have worked out absolutely perfect for them, they now can't buy because they chose to buy this other big title for £60. But like you said, if they're all on Game Pass, you download, you start playing. This isn't quite working for me. I did want to try it, but unfortunately I can't. Uninstall it, try the other game, and you find, oh my god, this is amazing. I'm absolutely loving this. This would never have been my first choice, but I've ended up coming back to it, and now I realize that I love it. And that again is, that's something that this singular price subscription with all of these options provides, is that the game that would have been your first choice may not be your best option. The game that would have been your 10th choice may end up being it, but you have the ability to try all these games and find out how they're going to work for you.
Go on, Lee.
It's a good topic to have come on to, actually, because thinking about it, you will have people that will claim that such and such disabled person should have researched the game first and found out if that game had the accessibility options that they would need to enjoy it before they go and drop their $60 and realize, well, actually, I can't play this game, so I've just wasted a ton of money. Which, I don't make a lot of money where I work, but it's comfortable enough that I can drop £60 on a game, and if I don't like it, it sucks, but it's not a huge problem. But when you're on a couple of £100, like a fortnight through our benefit system, it is a large chunk. So to be let down by the game not being accessible is a big problem. But the point I started this my little section, the point I'm trying to get to is we don't have to research our games and go, is it playable by a perfectly able-bodied person? So why should they have to? Why should they have to spend hours looking into a game to see if it's accessible for them? It just should be. It shouldn't be a matter of hoping that it is. It just should be. Games should be made with a certain level of accessibility options at this point.
That's why. Do you remember this was about a year or two ago now, but we were talking about it, Lychee, when it came out. The major jump forward that Xbox made with their accessibility controller hub.
Yeah, that big thing.
Yeah, with like the 6 billion ports it has on the back, all these different controller options that they've put out for people with disabilities to be able to use. Like I said, there was things like giant, like really large A, X, Y, and B buttons for people who can't hold a small controller and things like that. There was these big they were like these big round touchpads that you could use like a giant touchpad sort of analog stick, and these like foot pedals and all sorts. It was wild how many different device things that they developed, and they worked with disabled people as well to design them, to be like, how would this work? How can we make things accessible for you and things like that? And every single one of them just plugs straight into this accessible hub that they designed. That accessible hub then plugs straight into the Xbox One, and it just works. It'll work. You just tell the console that this foot pedal is now the A button, and that foot pedal is the B, and this big touchpad is now a replacement for your left analog stick, and things like that. And it was absolutely fantastic to see this sort of level of care and detail they went into to make sure that games were accessible to people who needed the accessibility, because not everybody can hold a controller.
Very true.
And they've definitely followed on from that philosophy in their more digital model as well. That's the physical side of what they did. And then things like the Game Pass and everything is the more digital side of what they've been doing, and trying to make sure that, just like I said, what they've said in the past, everybody deserves to play games. It doesn't matter how, why, or what your options are. Everybody can play games, and they want to make sure that they provide you with every opportunity that they physically can to allow you to play games. And if there's a reason why you can't, you can sure as hell bet they've if it's been brought to their attention, they'll probably find a solution for it within the next couple of years, because that's what they seem to be doing. Is they're trying to make games just universally playable. It's not about playing games on their console. It's just about playing games. And all of that stems from the fact that Phil Spencer, for example, since he's taken over, this man is passionate about what he does, and he's poured that passion so heavily into the model of Xbox over the years.
And there you go. That all of this conversation now that we've just had is all based on the accessibility that the branding of Xbox is doing for video gamers. Not for Xbox users, not for PC users, for video gaming as a whole. And in my personal opinion, Sony just is not on that level whatsoever with it. Accessibility is not within their repertoire, and it's not really being considered by them properly. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, actually, this is fortunately, they are moving in that direction, But that's because their rival and their competition is already doing that.
Yeah.
So Sony are bringing out basically like an Xbox Game Pass type deal with their first party titles, except for I'm pretty sure they said it wouldn't be like first day release. They are starting to bring out more of their first party titles onto PC, usually about a year after. Again, these are all focused timed exclusives. And you know, people who are praising I said this earlier, people who are praising exclusives as a marketing point of view need to really get a grip, because exclusivity is killing the industry, and I'm glad that exclusivity is dying for majority of the industry. I know that there's still Sony, there's still Nintendo. This situation of exclusivity will still continue, because let's face it, Halo's not going to go onto the PlayStation, as Uncharted isn't going to go onto the Xbox. That's fine. That's going to happen, and that's always going to happen. There's going to be exclusives. But your main selling point should be accessibility. It should not be come here so that you can only play this game. Spend 400-500 quid because we've got 3 games that you will not find anywhere else. That is not fair on somebody, and that's forcing them into that purchase. And that's why, in my opinion, Xbox, with their accessibility, because they've got accessibility with their new consoles and with everything new coming through and everything else like that, but they've sat there and said, you know what, 70% of titles that are coming out on the next generation, you can still have on your old generation, and you can still, you know, it works in tandem, and then when you upgrade, you can still have those games for no extra cost. Please tell me how that is not, in any way, shape or form, pro-consumer accessibility. And tell me how PlayStation are doing the same, because they're not. There's a couple of third-party titles, Cyberpunk is the best example, that have said, if you get Cyberpunk on PS4, you'll get it for free on PS5 through the store, which is fantastic. But that's not driven by Sony. Sony's response to it is, well, you can sign up for our Game Pass, and then you'll get access to loads of PlayStation 4 titles when you get a PlayStation 5.
It's not the same.
No.
It's just simply the only way you could describe that is just it's not the same.
And Pink Eye's kind of nailed it here. Exclusivity is the thing of the 2010s. Games simply won't work elsewhere, like a decent chunk of PC strategy games. Exactly, Pink Eye. And that's a very good one, because they've tried to do strategy games before.
Even in that way, things are slowly changing. For example, an MMO was, you go back 5-10 years and tell people like, oh, should MMOs come to console? And they'd laugh in your face and say, no, they'd never work. But look at Elder Scrolls Online. Elder Scrolls Online isn't the biggest of MMOs, but it's a pretty damn big one, and it works absolutely fantastically on consoles. It's, it just goes to show that it can take some extra work, but even then, these things they can be made to work. It's just all about putting the options in people's hands.
And Black Desert, as Pink Eye said,
And
that kind of leads. So all of this. So we've been live for 43 minutes now. The main topic was completely about how Microsoft have purchased Zenimax Media. We talked about 10 minutes for that, and I think the whole last half an hour has been so focused on why a lot of these huge Bethesda IPs, Arkham, God's sake. Arkane, thank you. I was thinking of Arkham Knights. All of those huge IPs will most probably still come to the wider audience, because Xbox is more focused on accessibility than exclusivity.
Yes.
And that is the key to take away from here. Will Elder Scrolls 6 be on PlayStation 5? I am 99% sure that it will be. Purely because
I promise you yes.
Yeah. Purely because of a profitability perspective. It does not make sense from a business perspective that you've already built an audience across the whole of the industry to then cut a portion of the industry out.
I don't think Bethesda would have made that deal, not even for 7.5 billion, if Microsoft had turned around and said, yeah, but I know not Starfield 1, but let's just say Starfield ends up being a huge game and we get Starfield 2. If they turned around and said that Fallout 5, Starfield 2, Elder Scrolls 6, they're going to be Xbox exclusives, I don't think a Zenimax Studio would have made that deal. I genuinely don't. Not even 7.5 billion.
No, and
It just,
you are
for
completely
the same
right.
reason that they shut down Sony when Sony tried to have Starfield as a timed exclusive. They just straight up denied them. They were just like, no. Like, it's just not going to happen. They're too big. Can you imagine an exclusive Elder Scrolls game? People would lose their shit.
Oh, people would lose their shit. And Pink Eye has just mentioned there that it's probably because they've done most of the work. The problem is with that Pink Eye is, let's say they then release the Elder Scrolls and they start to focus on the Fallout series. What would
Elder
happen?
Scrolls 6 will not have been in development yet.
Either way, cutting out. You've got to remember that Elder Scrolls and Fallout. I'm going to use these two as probably the biggest IPs that are currently out there for these companies. They have such a wide audience that no matter where it's being sold, it will be purchased. Look at Skyrim, for fuck's sake. That's been purchased about 7 times by everybody.
Todd has a boner for getting Skyrim on everything physically possible. Do you think the Elder Scrolls 6 isn't coming to everything physically possible?
And then again, and then again, and then again after that. He's just sold it again for $7.5 billion.
Makes sense.
But no,
Todd Howard's done it again.
Genuinely, it's such a large IP that it makes no sense when you're guaranteed a wide audience that you cut a portion of the audience off, because from a profitability perspective, you'll be losing too much profit, and you've got to remember that. I'm going to take just 3 main platforms here for an Elder Scrolls game, especially Skyrim back in 2011. There were 3 main platforms, in which one of them wasn't even around from release, I think. There was the PlayStation platform, the Xbox platform, and then the PC platform. I'm pretty sure PC was about a year later anyway. So let's say equally, each platform across the last 9 years have got an equal share of the sales across that game. So PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, they're all at about 33.33% recurring. Now, you can bet that everybody who loved that game will most probably buy the sequel. Or you'll get new people buying the sequel. And let's say that there's another split. Maximum of sales and profitability, you'll be cutting off 33% of that. You'll be saying to PlayStation people who only have a PlayStation console, nope, sorry, it's not coming out of the console. Bang, 33% is immediately gone. But a new IP doesn't have that pre-established fan base. A new IP can easily become an exclusive, which will most probably happen with acquiring these studios, because there's no guarantee of profitability of it, if that makes sense. So you're not cutting off your own profit, you're just building it for that exclusivity. And if Xbox acquired ZeniMax Media for exclusivity, then that would have been announced immediately, and they would have said these future titles for this studio will only come out on Xbox. That would have been the first thing, because I can guarantee to you that if Sony did this, they would say, bang, all of these are going to be exclusives, and everything coming out of this studio that would be their main selling point.
Yeah, if all of these games were coming to Xbox only, it'd be the biggest thing for them to say, of just like, yeah, guys, if you want these games, get our console.
Exactly, and I don't. And now we're saying this now because this is the current state of Xbox. 5 years down the line could be a completely different experience. You have a look at, as you've mentioned already, Roost, what happened not even 5 years ago, when. And for the Xbox One release, where the Xbox One was being commissioned as a TV box. Fuck off.
Yeah.
As a games console. Let me play my game. Stop forcing the Kinect on me. Stop forcing these peripherals that I just don't care about on me. And then since then, they got rid of the director. They brought in Phil Spencer. He's turned it around for accessibility and everything like that. And it's now in a fantastic place. We say this now, though. 5 years down the line, could very well change. We don't know that. But as of right now, I am so confident that those huge IPs will not become exclusives. We'll just have to wait and see what happens 5 to 10 years down the line.
Yeah. So to touch on what Pink Eye has just said, so with Avowed, we haven't really had much to go on other than that one little trailer, which kind of showed a little bit of a theme. So we don't really know gameplay-wise how big it's going to be. Is it going to be like a Skyrim-esque game, as most people think? But the thing is I don't personally believe that Avowed and Elder Scrolls are going to be well, they will technically be direct competitors, but they're not really going to end up competing with each other because of the year's difference in their release. So Avowed, I reckon we've got 2 years for Avowed to come out. I would say 2022 is probably going to be Avowed's release. Could be wrong, but that's sort of my guesstimation. Yeah. Now, Elder Scrolls 6, we're looking at 2025, 2026. Years later. Yeah. Like Avowed will have been out for
Star
years.
Citizen might have been out by then.
Exactly. And also to touch on the thing you said just before it about chances are they've got a running port of Elder Scrolls 6 for PS5. I can guarantee you there is no playable Elder Scrolls 6 at the moment. Elder Scrolls 6 is nowhere near in the playable kind of development stage, not even as like a really early thing. So with Bethesda Game Studios, the way they develop very, very focused on one project. Towards the end of that project cycle, they'll start pre-production of their next game. But actual production will not start until the previous one has released. So with Starfield, it's coming to the end of its production. Obviously, it looks like I believed and hoped we'd be looking at Starfield, coming out, about around nowish. But it's very clear at this point. Starfield's going to be 2021, but it's heading into its sort of final months of production, which means Elder Scrolls 6 will be in pre-production at the moment, where they're starting to write story, they're starting to generate assets and get assets ready for use and things like that. They're probably collaborating the engine, getting things ready, but there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff being done by a smaller team of people, while the bulk 90% of the team will continue to work on Starfield. As soon as Starfield releases, a splinter team of, let's just say, 5% of the studio, that's a number I'm pulling out of my head, but let's just say 5% of the studio will remain on Starfield to continue upkeep for the next year, where they will continue to put out any updates, DLC, things like that. And it is at that moment, as soon as Starfield releases, is when Elder Scrolls 6 will hit full development. But Elder Scrolls is looking at like a 4 to 5 year development cycle.
Yeah.
So I can promise you that with Avowed probably coming out in the next 2 years, Elder Scrolls won't be coming out for the next 4 to 5 years. Although technically, from a genre and their theme point of view, they will be competitors. No one's going to be choosing which of the two to buy or play, because
I think competitors
if you like
is
that,
the wrong.
You've got Avowed. Yeah.
I think it's the wrong term. I think comparisons is probably the right term here, because they're not directly competing, because they won't be released within the same time scale. They will be compared though, very much so.
People will have their favourites, but without doubt they'll have both. There's not going to be anybody at any time that's going to be choosing between Avowed or Elder Scrolls, because Avowed's going to come out and everyone's going to buy it, and then years and years down the line, Elder Scrolls is going to come out, and 2 to 3 year release cycle. Yeah, that'd be pretty good. I can agree with that. But yeah, I highly doubt that there's any kind of sort of runnable port on the PS5 at the moment. So technically, they probably could get away with like an exclusivity of Elder Scrolls 6, but like they won't. They just won't.
No, I think from a business perspective, it just wouldn't make sense. What we've also got to remember here, everyone, is that console sales are not that profitable in some cases, a lot of companies can actually lose money when you count in man hours and work hours.
The
So-
PS3 lost money. PS3
Yeah.
didn't make profit
and
for many years.
that's something that we all have to take into consideration as well, that using exclusives to sell consoles is not actually, that's not a thing really. It's to get more people onto a platform to sell them more games.
Yeah.
And the way that Xbox are doing it allows the accessibility across multiple platforms, so that it wouldn't make any sense for them to only make exclusives in that respect and regard. In my opinion, like I said, this could change down the line, but anybody who's worried about the acquisition of the Bethesda teams and everybody else under Zenimax Media, especially with Fallout, Doom, Elder Scrolls, genuinely, I don't think there's anything to worry about. Not for the next 5 to 10 years at the very least. And that's it. Leechy, do you have anything to say?
No, not really, to be honest.
Right, so if we're about to be wrapping this up,
Yeah.
I just want to do one more thing again, just to really get people's juices flowing, get things pumping, because this is exciting. People should be excited. So I just want to remind people, Dishonored, Prey, boom, day one Game Pass. Wolfenstein, Doom, day one Game Pass. Evil Within, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Starfield, all day one Game Pass.
I fucking love Phil Spencer.
That is ridiculous.
That is so crazy. I wanna just quantify something very, very quickly as we wrap up as well. I'm gonna take the average prices of video games now to about £30 to £40 in like current states, release it points, sale points, anything like that. So across the entire sort of period, we're probably looking at about £30 to £40 per game.
Yeah.
They're rough figures. Now we're spending at least £8 on a part of Game Pass for 100 titles.
Yeah.
That, in and of itself, is probably the equivalent of £3,000 to £4,000.
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave you with that.
£3,000 to £4,000 worth of games for under £100 every year.
Yeah.
All year, every year.
In which probably about 10 to 20 of those games will most probably be first-party titles that were released on day one.
Yeah.
Across the
Day
year.
one for under £100 a year. 100 more like 150 if you've got Ultimate, which again, that is fantastic if you play on console, and it also gives you Xbox Live. That have all of those games, all of the games going out and more. I'm sure they're going to continue to expand. Is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And with Nikki's point here, anyway, that they won't stay on Game Pass, that's absolutely fine, because do you know what? It's not like they don't replace it. A new game replaces it.
Yeah,
every
my
time.
thing is as well. They stay on Game Pass for long enough that it's to the point where you'll know what games you loved and what games you didn't. Yeah. So let's use Starfield as an example, because it's such a big title that's going to be coming. Let's say Starfield hits Game Pass day one, and it stays there for 2 years. For 2 years, you've got access to that game. By the time it's removed, you can pick it up for like 10, 12 quid probably. I'd be happy to pay that 10 quid to get that game that I know I put thousands of hours into.
Yeah. If I loved a game so much,
up the game that I put 10 hours into.
A resubscription. Harley, thank you so much for that. You disrupted the podcast, but thank you so much for the subscription there, buddy. 4 months. That's fucking crazy. I love you so much. And so it's building on your point there, Roost. If I had the game on Game Pass, I played it for 2 years religiously, and I loved it to that point, I would fucking spend 90 quid on it after those 2 years. If I loved it that much. 90, 60, I meant 60. I would spend full price of a day's release if I loved it to a point where I still wanted to play it after it came off the Game
But you
Pass.
just know it's going to be at such a fraction of a price by that time,
Yeah.
as well. That it allows you to play so many titles and find out what you do and don't love. That you have that option.
I don't know what the fuck just happened.
Nikki, man, thank you for the Prime as well.
3 months, then I'm out.
Thank you so much. So it looks like Harley Demise9 here says he's just pre-ordered the Xbox today. So there's a man who's sold on it. And there we go.
Yep.
Guys, we're definitely got to wrap this one up because we've just hit the hour mark.
We've hit the hour mark and it was on one small topic, but it was a wild one.
It was crazy. And I think everybody across the industry has to admit that the accessibility that Xbox is providing video gamers
300 gigabytes.
is just incredible.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody can argue that fact. And anybody who sits there and says, well, specs are more important, are snobby assholes.
If specs are more important, get a PC. If games are more important and you like consoles, then just get the one you like more.
Exactly.
Like this, like that. That's the key point. Is it's all about weighing up the options and what works for you, and rather than Sony best kill. Fuck's sake.
But
yeah,
that's it. Everybody in the stream, thank you all so much for watching. Leechy, you've been integral to this conversation. I love you. Everybody,
Not sure where you'd be without me, to be honest.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't be able to do this without you, man. Just
no, God no. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I love these podcasts so much. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for reaching this point as well. We will hopefully be back with something else and something very juicy. If you want the conversation to continue, then you can find me and Rooster on Twitter. You can join the Discord and carry it on with me, Rooster, and Leechy, and everybody else in that Discord. The Discord for the YouTube will be in the link down below, but for you guys in the stream, it's just !Discord if you're not already there. But other than that, guys, thank you all for joining us on episode 15. This shall be released on YouTube hopefully by tomorrow. But for now, I will see everybody who is here, most probably on Wednesday. If you come back to the stream tomorrow, I'll be live again at 8 PM. But thanks, everyone. Much love to each and every one of you. Thank you for subscribing if you did sub towards the end. Nikki and Harley, you guys are fucking awesome. But for now, guys, I'm going to end the stream.